Hi, guys. Welcome to this week's episode of Grooves of Influence. My name's Xavier, your host, and today our guest is Nico. Nico, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, let's go. So I'm Nico Ducarme. I'm a musician from Brussels, Belgium, and I make quote-unquote soul music. I've been doing it for quite a while, but I've had my own project for a little bit over 2 years. And yeah, I produce and play and I make my own music, mostly in my bedroom, but sometimes in other places too.
And so, like every episode, we start off with that same question. What is the most influential album to you?
It's right here. I got it on vinyl like for Christmas, but it's Voodoo by D'Angelo,
Very nice,
which
man.
is
It's an amazing
yeah,
album.
one of the albums that definitely changed my life forever.
Okay. Can you tell me more about that?
So it's the second studio album by D'Angelo. It was released in 2000. I was born in 2000. It was released like just before I was born. It was released in January. And yeah, I think it's just a masterpiece of soulful music. It features some of my favorite musicians ever on the record. And yeah, it just has a sound and a feel that I've never heard before and I haven't heard since. Like it just, there's no word to describe what I feel when I listen to the album. And I remember when I first heard it, I I couldn't listen to anything else for like 3 months. I just put Voodoo on repeat, and yeah, there's so much. I don't know what aspect you want to talk about, but there's so much. I could go on hours and hours on this album.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of curious. I'm not super knowledgeable about Brussels, but like, how does soul music fit in Brussels? Like, I didn't realize that D'Angelo made it all the way over there.
So yeah, I was born and raised in Brussels. I actually spent most of my teens in the suburbs of Brussels, a little bit outside of the city. But I moved here for university, and I did a degree, and I've been living in Brussels since. And there's a really nice music scene actually in Brussels. It's quite a small city, so everyone knows each other, and there's a lot of very very good musicians. And even if soul music's not like the most prominent genre of the musical landscape, it's still very popular. There's a lot of people from the music schools in Brussels that are very good musicians, and a lot of them know about that. But it's mostly in the like musicians circle. If you go in the street and you ask, "Do you know D'Angelo?" They probably will not know about him.
Okay, but you musicians over there, you know
Yeah.
what's up.
Yeah, there's a lot of great jam sessions, and I actually met most of my best friends doing jam sessions. Uh, yeah, and I think my first ever jam sessions, we played a few D'Angelo tunes. There's a lot of them that get played a lot in jam sessions here, especially like Spanish Joint, which is one of the songs on that album. It's just a perfect tune to jam on.
What makes that tune kind of the one for you guys to choose to jam on? Like, what about it musically, or is it just something you guys all like?
It's a Latin groove, and it's not something that gets played a lot during jam sessions. And so I think that it's different enough that people like it, and it's whatever the setting is, whatever the number of musicians, is a pretty easy groove to fit in. And yeah, and the how do you say that, um the structure of the song is actually quite easy. There's not a lot of chords, or which makes it a great jam tune.
Isn't that kind of funny about funk music though?
Yeah,
It's not it's not overly complicated. It's not
yeah,
like these really super complicated um rhythms and different like kind of chord progressions typically, but it's just like the layers create the depth,
yeah, yeah,
right?
for real.
And it's like everybody, and it's a feel thing oftentimes, and that's what I was hearing listening to the album. I mean, it's such a feel thing. Like these guys just have such a good feel with each other, and you can hear it and you feel it, in your own music. Like, do you try to incorporate some of that?
Actually, when you sent me an invite to do this podcast, I really thought about how this album impacted me as a musician. So when I discovered this album, I wasn't writing songs. I was just like playing music. I started playing piano when I was younger, and I've been playing guitar for 7 to 8 years, and now it's my main instrument. And it was the first album that made me want to play stuff that feels good rather than play impressive stuff. Like during that time of my this time of my life, I wanted to play like as fast as I could, play like impressive stuff on guitar. And when I discovered that kind of playing, it made me want to like just try to play a simple groove as best as I can for like 8 minutes. And yeah, I realized that it's not easier. It's actually, it's for me, it was harder. I had to learn how to uh, develop a good sense of rhythm and pocket. And yeah, on this album, there's two guitar player. One of like no, I think there's more. There's three guitar player. There's Spanky Alford, which is the main guitar player on the record, and I discovered him through that record, and he just changed my life. He was a gospel musicians, and he played with a lot of neo soul and R&B artists of that era. He played with Tony Tone. I don't know if you know about them.
Mhm.
Yeah, but he just played the most beautiful thing ever, and it's just incredible. And they incorporated a lot of stuff from the Black church, and so in this record, there's a lot of things that D'Angelo brought from the church into popular music. And that's one of the reasons why it's such a important album for the musical world. Music today would not be the same without that album and without D'Angelo.
Yeah, D'Angelo is interesting because he mixed a lot of spirituality within his
Yeah,
songs. Like I don't know, like when you listen to the album, it's hard to not focus on the musical elements. Like it's really
yeah,
difficult.
yeah,
Like you have to listen to it several
mm,
times to be like,
yeah,
okay, I want to look at these lyrics. And
yeah,
if you start looking at those lyrics, they're so dense, dude. Like, have
yeah.
you kind of explored that route?
He's such underrated as a lyricist, and one of the reasons is that you cannot understand what he's saying when he's singing. Like that's crazy. I'm not English, not my first language. Obviously, I speak French, and I thought that my English level was not as good to just understand the lyrics. And then I asked like some English speaking friends, "Do you understand what he's singing about?" And they don't understand. And it's the way the voice is mixed in the record and the way that he sings with like a very southern Texas accent. It's very hard to understand what he's saying. So yeah, it took me a while to get to the lyric, as you say, because like I think the first couple of years I've had this record, I just focused on the groove and the guitar and the drums, and when I looked into the lyrics, I was, oh, that's once you see like the rhymes and the spirituality and everything, it's so dense. Like only the lyrics is just a, a masterpiece of its own, but yeah, it gets overshadowed by the musicality of it, as you say.
Yeah, it's like this. He's so emotionally dense with this laid back groove. Was there any songs on there, now after kind of understanding like his lyrical depth that stand out to you? Like any song particularly?
For me, actually, it's a song called "Devil's Pie,"
Hmm.
which is about like greed and envy and how to not get caught up in those things. And yeah, I've I think I looked up at the lyrics maybe 3 years after listening to the song for the first time, and I actually didn't realize what the song was about. Uh, and one day I just like got on genius.com and looked at the lyrics, and I was stunned on how beautiful it was and how it's like it's literal poetry. Um, and yeah, it's he the way that the rhymes works in like especially the chorus is just genius. And yeah, I think that also another song which is called "Send It On," which is like a love song ballad, very like classic slow jam R&B, and this is a little bit more simple, like it's more straightforward. There's not like metaphors, and it's a little bit easier to understand. But yeah, the words that it chooses just go perfectly with the music. And yeah, I really like lyricists that explain complicated things with easy words rather than doing the opposite. Like I think like my favorite lyricist of all time is Stevie Wonder, and he actually does that very well. Like if you look at the lyrics and the words that he uses, he never used complex words. He always used like very simple words, but the way that he used them in metaphors and the way that he makes the lyrics flow is just beautiful. And that's one thing that I want to do with my music. I never want to try to just put one complicated word to make it sound artsy. Uh, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing about D'Angelo's lyricism to me is it's so visual. He's a
yeah,
very visual
yeah.
writer. Like The Devil's Pie. Like there was a line in there like people lining up to wait for a piece of a devil's pie or something like that. And
Mm.
like you could just imagine it. And they're like throughout the album, I was just like, oh my gosh. You know the song The Line? It's
Yeah,
really gospel-ish feeling.
mm.
That's kind of what you were hinting at earlier. He's
Yeah,
definitely has those roots of gospel music, right? And they use this analogy of a gun. Like I'm gonna pull this trigger, and like you can
mm.
just like feel it, and it's like you said, it's not overly complicated, fancy words, but it's simple, um, but super visual. And then when it comes to the music, like the instrumentation of the album, what songs kind of stand out for you? Like, what do you pull from the album into your own music?
Uh, Pretty much every song. It's like it's so hard to choose, but I think that um the a few songs that were like very influential was uh a song called "Feel Like Making Love," which is a cover by Robert Flack,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like the stinkiest groove ever. Like I just cannot do anything other than dancing when I listen to that song. It's just the way that they play around with the time, like having the drums a little bit late, and sometimes like the everything is laid back, but it creates like such a push and pull in the groove that yeah, I think that the song that stand out to me musically. Um, and yeah, and if we're gonna talk about Voodoo, I think we have to talk about Pino Palladino, which is the bass player on that record, which is just like played some of the best bass line ever on that record. Like on this song, he's just played like very simple stuff at the beginning. Like he doesn't even play line; he just played like the root notes, but he makes it groove so hard, and the tone is so fat, and that yeah, musically that was it's a very key element for me in that album. And then the other most influential thing for me was the guitar playing. I was playing guitar. That was the only thing that I was doing before starting to release my own music. And on this record, there is two of my favorite guitar player ever, which is Spanky Alford, that I talked about earlier. But it's also Charlie Hunter. I don't know if you know about him, but he's a guitar player and he plays bass and guitar on the same instrument. So he has the top three strings, which go to like a bass amp, and the other strings, he plays 8 or 7 strings guitar, and the other strings, so the other 5 or the other 4 strings, they go in the guitar amp. And so he just like play both parts at the same time. And actually on Spanish Joint, the song that gets jammed a lot in Brussels, he played both at the same time. Like it's just there's no guitar player and bass player. He's playing all at the same time. And when you talk about this without hearing the record, you can think, oh, it's just like a gimmick and it's just like something to do to make it impressive. But it's so musical. The way he hears it, it's not to brag, or it's just the uh, today with Instagram, there's a lot of musicians that play things just to be impressive and just to impress other people, and that could fit in that category, because why would you play bass and guitar on the same instrument? Just get like a bass player and a guitar player. But he does it in a way that, yeah, it's so musical. And he play also on a song The Root, and I actually didn't know. I knew Charlie and Hunter before listening to the record, but I didn't know that he was playing when I listened to the record. And when I discovered that it was not a bass player and a guitar player, and it was the same dude who played both at the same time, I was like stunned. And I had to verify on the internet because I could not believe that the same dude was playing both. Yeah, it's crazy. And he's, I think, like the past few years, the guitar player that has been the most influential to me, because as I said to you before, I wanted to play complicated stuff and fast lines and stuff, and he just play things that feels good and that groove. And as a singer, I really want to accompany myself in that way. And
Yeah, no, it's incredible musicianship throughout the whole album, which I feel like is something that, I mean, any artist aspires to. Like, to get the groove of D'Angelo is, I mean, it's definitely something to aspire to. I guess in your own music, what's kind of your thought process when you go into trying to make a groove? Like, you've talked about these groove sessions that you guys have. Like, what's kind of the thought process that you guys have as a group, individually? Like, how does this work?
actually, in my own project, so all the music that I've released and all the music that I've been making, I have a very singer-songwriter approach. I usually start the song with just like piano and vocals or guitar and vocal, and I will not produce the song before it's finished. And that's actually something that really helped me, because it's a limitation, but it makes it so much easier when you go into the studio and you go into your computer to record the song. It makes it so much easier to have everything laid out, and you know how much measure the bridge is, and you know what's the structure, and you know what's the groove. And um, in that album, something that made me want to do that was listening to the outtakes of Voodoo. So you can go on YouTube. There's a bunch of outtakes of that album. So songs that weren't didn't end up on the album, or live version, or jams. And there's a live acoustic version of Spanish Joint, and it's just D'Angelo by himself on piano. And when you listen to that, it's just like a demo. It sounds like the complete song. He already has the groove, and he already has the bass line and the chords. And I want to do that. I want to have a song that works perfectly on the piano or guitar before going further with the song. And I think that's the only rule that I always follow, because then for other things, like sometimes I start with lyrics, sometimes I start with the melody, sometimes I start with chords. But the only thing that I always do is try to have a song that works acoustically solo.
That's interesting. So you say you kind of start, you sometimes start with lyrics, sometimes start with melodies. It's kind of interesting. Like some of the conversations I've had with other artists, like a lot of them are very consistent in the way that they start writing their music. Like every time I'm going to start with lyrics or something. How did you kind of develop this kind of more, I don't know, you could say almost distributed approach?
I don't really think about this, but I think that it makes every song different. Every song's gonna sound like me, because it's me who's singing and it's me who's writing. But yeah, it makes every song a little bit different, and I think that that's a good thing. And then what I talked about earlier, try to have a song that works in a solo context. When I decide to write with just one instrument, it really forced me to focus on the music. And maybe if I was writing with beats, or if I was writing with loops, I think I might be more consistent with the way that I write. Because when you're in a session and you write to a beat, usually the melody comes first, Usually you just hum a melody, and because the beat is going, so you cannot like think about lyrics. You don't have the time, and sometimes a word will pop out. But when you write a song with a guitar, you have time to pause and time to think about what it makes you feel, and it's easier for me to incorporate lyrics. And sometimes it's lyrics first, and I will not write a note before the lyrics are written. And sometimes it's total opposite, and most of the time it's in between.
And when you're writing your music, what are you trying to talk about? Like, what are you trying to express?
It's a very good question. I think that it depends. Sometimes it's about like a very specific feeling. So sometimes, like, for example, a song that I'm gonna put out in the following weeks, it's about wanting to take more picture, because I'm the kind of dude who never takes picture. And like one of my best friends just moved out a few thousand miles away, and I realized that I had like two shitty pictures of the two of us, and we've been like very good friends for 10 years. And I'm like, I really suck at taking pictures, especially at important moments. And that's like a very specific, um, I wrote that song about that specific feeling, but sometimes it's more general. For example, the first song that I've ever put out, it's about the want to. It's about me wanting love to be a little bit easier than it should be. It's a general concept about love, and that's not like a specific feeling about a person, or just my general view on love and relationship. And yes, and sometimes it's something like that, and sometimes it's something a little bit more specific. But it's always thing that I feel, and I always talk about the things I feel. I always talk about introspect interest. Wait, intro. It's always
Introspective.
introspective. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Your songs typically have more of an introspective theme. Um, okay. That's really cool. And like, I was also curious, like in your music, like you kind of have combination, but you sing in English. Like, how did that, how did that happen?
I think this main reason is that most of the music that I've listened since I was a baby was English music. And so I think that, yeah, when I wanted to start writing my own music, it was just natural move to sing in English. But then to deeper sense, I think it's when I sing in English, it's when you compare to writing, when I write in French, it's like writing with a pencil, like just writing notes. But when I write in English, it's like writing with a paintbrush. And as it's not my first language, I will be more cautious of what I use and the word that I use, and I will write like I sing and not write like I talk. And so yeah, it's easier to be musical, I think, in English, to my point of view. Then there's maybe a third reason is that I think that it's a little bit easier to write in English because there are less words. In French, there's a lot of there's a lot of words for the same thing, but like a little bit different. Like there's 1,000 words for a car, there's 1,000 words for sweatshirts. And it can be a little hard because if you choose the first words that come to mind, it's sometimes a little bit cheesy. You can never say in French, you can never say like, I love you more than you'll ever know. For example, like that's going to sound too cheesy. So you have to find your way around metaphors and words. And it's not as direct as singing English.
That's interesting. And I know we kind of touched on it a while ago. I'm still kind of curious. How did you find Voodoo? Like, how did this come across, your listening?
That's a very good question. And I actually remember that day very well. So uh, at that moment in my life, I just started playing guitar. It was when I was 17, 18. and I was obsessed with John Mayer, as a lot of guitarists are. Like I was trying to learn every song, every solo, everything off of every record. And there's a performance, a live concert with the John Mayer Trio, and he's playing Chicken Grease, which is one of the song of Voodoo. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. What is that song? And I checked in the comments to see the set list. And yeah, that's how I found the song. And then I just, when I found a song that I really like, I always listen to the album where that song come from. And yeah, it was actually not the easiest first listen in the world. Like when I when I after my first listen, I was like a little bit. I didn't know what to think about the record because it was so weird and so unlike anything I've listened. But yeah, the second listen was way better, and I was like, oh shit, that's gonna be a very important album to me.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how some albums are that way. Like you got to build up your musical chops a little bit to be able to listen to something like that.
If I listened to this album when I was like 14, I would have hated it.
Yeah, and you said something that I think is intriguing. So when you say you find a new song, you listen to the whole album. Why do you do that?
Because I think that today with playlists and Spotify, very good song gets lost, because of the singles and because of the songs that gets popular. And that's a little bit sad. Sometimes some of my friends know only the hits and only the singles of Voodoo, only because that's what's in the playlist and what's in Spotify playlists. And yeah, sometimes you miss out of you miss on you miss out on very good stuff on the album, because a hit to somebody is not the same as a hit to somebody else. And yeah, I realized that, for example, with Voodoo, the songs that I really like are not especially the most popular one, and it's the same for a lot of albums. And I think I encourage everyone that's listening to go and dig every song you like and try to listen to the album, because I think you may find other songs that you really like.
Yeah. Is there any last thoughts you have about the album itself, Voodoo, that just like something else that we haven't mentioned yet?
Uh, I think I noted something when I took the time to listen to the record a few times, and I actually noted a few things. For me, there's something that's really important. That album is um, when I discovered that album, it was right around the same time that I discovered two other albums that are very influential to me, which is Continuum by John Mayer and Geography by Tom Misch. And I realized that those albums share a lot in common. And there's one piece that connects those three albums together. It's Roy Hargrove, which is a trumpet player, which is playing on Voodoo, and is also playing on Continuum. And Geography, the album by Tom Misch, starts with a monologue by Roy Hargrove. And when I discovered that, I was like, oh, that's incredible. That my three favorite albums of all time, they share something in common. And it's not the same musical style. Those were released years apart. Like Voodoo was in 2000. Yeah, 2000. Continuum was in 2006 or 2007, and Geography was released in 2018. So quite a few years apart, those albums. And then there's a lot of musicians that played both on Voodoo and Continuum. Pino Palladino, who played bass, Roy Hargrove, as I said before, and Spanky Alford, the guitar player that I mentioned before, also played on Continuum. And so that's just crazy to. It took me a while to realize that, because I was just listening to the song the first few years, and then when I really got into them and I really start to look in the liner notes and the credits, I realized that, oh, that's so cool that they share so much in common. And that's maybe why I like them both.
That's wild, man. I did not know that. That's definitely a cool fact. I love all three of those albums. So that's awesome. And so for the listeners who want to check out your stuff, man, what should we be listening to? We want to hear you.
So I have a lot of music. I don't know, not a lot. All of my music, you can find it on every streaming platform, legal or illegal. But I'd rather be legal so I can get like a few cents. Yeah, you can find me on Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal. You can follow me on Instagram. That's where I post the most. And I have a second EP that's coming in spring. I released my first EP 2 years ago, and yeah, I'm about to release my second one, which includes 2 singles that I released this year, which is Familiar, a song that I released 6 months ago, and another song which is called Fragments, which is a French song. And yeah, if you want to check out 2 songs of me, I'll encourage to check out those first.
Awesome, man. Well, we appreciate it. We can't wait. I'm glad we caught you at a good time. So now we're going to know about
Nice.
the EP when it releases.
Perfect.
Well, I just want to thank you, Nico, for
Thank you so
spending some
much.
time with me. Yeah, talking about music. Always love the chance. And we can't wait to see where you go.
Perfect. Thank you so much for it. It's such a honor to be featured on your podcast.